That's what I try to explain to parents. Like, it's okay not to be ready for that right out of high school. Every kid's different.
Yeah.
He would be the first one to tell you that he wasn't ready to play Division I football out of high school.
Yeah.
So he took the very best D2 opportunity he had, and he went there. He got bigger. He got stronger. He grew like an inch or two. He got up to about 215 pounds, and we ended up taking him, and half the league wanted him.
I'll just share my example because you evaluated my high school game film, and I was absolutely not a Division I. I was absolutely not a Division II, NAIA at best.
Right.
And I ended up being an SEC scholarship player.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Football Scholarship Podcast, the playbook for parents and athletes who want to secure the best football scholarships possible. From securing a D1 football scholarship in the SEC at Ole Miss at just $5,700 myself, to helping 83% of the athletes I mentor achieve football scholarship offers and 42% going Division I. I've learned countless lessons that I'll be sharing right here with you. Join me and my co-host Brian Overton, who has 15 years of D1 college football recruiting experience, as we interview top experts, successful athletes, and discuss current recruiting trends. Together, we'll help you navigate the recruiting process so you too can achieve your dream of running out of that tunnel in front of 100,000 screaming fans.
What's going on? This is Richie Contartesi with the Football Scholarship Podcast, alongside my co-host, Mr. Brian Overton. And today we're going to be talking about the last day to earn a college football scholarship. We always get a lot of questions around when can you earn a scholarship? When is it too late to attempt to try to earn a scholarship for Division I, Division II, NAIA? There are different timelines on when signing day is, or not technically signing day anymore, but what do we call it? What day? Not signing day, but I heard another term. I thought it was good. A day of celebration, whatever. Celebration day. But the timelines of when that can actually happen for the different divisions. And so that you know whether, obviously this podcast is very timely in that sense, and we want you to know how much time you have to do outreach to schools, to continue to market yourself. And so this is so important to us because everyone's like, oh, and around this period of time, early November, early December, is it too late? And 99.9% of the time it's not, because your most athletes of the 1.1 million high school football players aren't signing Big Ten, SEC college football scholarships. We're talking about, 500-600 people of the 1.1 million. So for the majority of high school football players, there is way more time than people think. So, Brian, let's just break down the actual dates. So when is early signing day? We'll still call it signing day, right?
Yeah. So obviously with the college football playoff and all those things that have happened, recently, they changed a lot of the dates. Well, not a lot of them. I shouldn't say a lot of them. They drastically changed the one in December to accommodate with the transfer portal and the college football playoff now. They're adding more games. And they didn't want schools to have to deal with, obviously, getting ready for games, the transfer portal window open, and signing day. So they moved the early period up for Division I and Division II to December 4th and the 6th. So it used to be like the middle of December. I think last year it was like the 18th or something.
It was like 18th, yeah.
So they basically moved it up 2 weeks so schools can focus on that. Right when the season's over with, they can focus on getting their guys signed that they know are going to sign early and get it over with. And then, there's a period in there where they obviously can't sign. It's only 3 days, 4th, 5th, and 6th. And that's the early period for Division I and Division II.
Yeah.
And then it opens back up again.
But I want to pause right there. I think, I'm a big, obviously as an Ole Miss fan, I'm really excited about the college football playoff.
Right.
And, I'm really glad that they moved the signing day up, because 18th night, the playoff games are happening right then.
Yeah.
So I think that was a really smart. I think they had to do that. Do you think that's why they did it?
No, absolutely. Yeah, it was a combination. It was a combination of that, accommodating the teams that are in the playoff. But also, you know, there's a portal window going on during that time too. So, you know what I mean? There was no way you can ask teams to
crazy.
try, and not even just the playoff, even bowl teams. Like, you got to count them in there too, because they're practicing, getting ready for bowl games too. So they're doing the same thing essentially. It just wasn't as fair. You know, it wasn't fair to the teams to ask them to get ready for bowl games or playoff games, manage the transfer portal, whether it's your guys going out or you recruiting other guys, and trying to, you know, finish off your signing class. That's just, you know, it was just way too much. And it was requested by the coaches. Like, it was a big push. Like, once the playoff came out and was going to happen, and they knew it was going to happen, and they had already been through the transfer portal early window a couple of times. It was requested by the coaches that it get moved up so they could get the high school early period out of the way so they could handle the other stuff effectively.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, this early period is for the teams that would be in the playoffs and teams that are close, the bubble guys, the top like 40, 35 schools, right? Like, at most, really, probably the top like 20 schools.
Yeah,
25.
it's a good portion of the Power Four. You know what I mean? You can count all those guys in there that have a really good portion of their class, so they know. Didn't you
guys last year, like at Arkansas, wasn't it like 95% of your class was on early signing?
Yeah. And it's like that for most of the Power Four. Like, you'll have some guys here and there. Obviously, you'll lose a guy here and there towards the end of the year, and you're still working guys into the next signing period. But for the most part, for most of the Power Four, they're going to sign a good portion of their high school class on that date.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's going to take a lot of guys off the board. You know, they know where they're going at this point. And again, there's exceptions, you know, here and there. But for the most part, you kind of know who you're locked in with, and they're going to sign. And that's what it's for, to kind of get those guys signed and ready to go. And again, most of them are January enrollees anyway, so they're going to sign early anyway because they want to get to school in January.
Yeah.
And that's becoming a major, major thing over the last, I'd say, at least 4 or 5 years. That's become like a huge priority for guys to get their academics in order so they can get to school in January, because they want to be able to go through spring ball and compete for, you know, spots.
Yeah.
So, it'll be a good majority of the Power Four will sign during that date.
Yeah. So, okay. So early signing day, 4th, 5th, and 6th, you know, we're talking the top 500 of the entire recruiting class. And the recruiting class is hundreds of thousands, right? So,
that's a lot.
So, you know, I just don't get discouraged or don't feel like, oh, we only have until December or even February, because we're going to share with you the actual timelines, and they're probably way different than what you thought they are. So it's really important to understand this. But so, okay, 4th, 5th, and 6th, most of the big-time Power 4 programs are going to have the majority of their class handled during this period of time.
Yep.
We got the playoffs. Good thing during this period of time, Ole Miss wins out, locks up the national championship. Now let's talk about, we roll into January, and in that period of time, what does that look like? January, we got February. When does the next signing period open up?
Right. So for Division I and Division II, the next one opens up in early February. I think it's like the 2nd or so, somewhere in there. It's really early February. For Division I, it opens from that February date.
February 5th.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's February, March, and April. So it closes April 1st. So it's basically a 2-month window.
Yeah.
For Division II, it goes to August the 1st.
See, that's the big thing.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. All right. So Power 4 sign early December. From that period, December 6th up until February 5th, like, that's when all the FCS schools, the G5 schools, everybody who didn't sign with the big-time Power 4s, this is when a lot of those offers are going to come out. You're going to see tons of people posting, I got an offer, I'm committing, I'm signing. And also Division II, but you're going to see a lot of FCS and a lot of G5 at this time.
Yeah, because they, you know, a lot of stuff shakes out, you know what I mean, early on. And then again, like I said, it takes a lot of guys off the board, you know what I mean, which, you know, typically those divisions aren't recruiting those guys anyway. But it really gets into the nuts and bolts of them finishing their class during that time, you know, because those divisions typically don't either have as many early commitments as like the big guys do. You know, they recruit them longer, you know what I mean? And they're more strategic, you know what I mean? Because they really want to know who their pool of guys are after that first of the year that they're really targeting. That now the bigger schools can't just come poach because they've signed most of their class already.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
So, you know, they're very cognizant of that, which is a great strategy. It's really the only strategy you can have, because the last thing you want to do is, you know, have, you know, 5 or 6 guys committed to you, you know, through the season. There's like a G5, for instance, or FCS, and, you know, have them committed through the season, and they have really good senior years. Well, now a Power 4 team has missed on a guy or lost a guy, and now they like him a lot more, you know, and they just come poach him, you know what I mean, in the early period. Now you're starting, you know, you got to replace them. So they really use that as a time of year to really lock in on finishing out their class. That's why you see more of those offers and stuff coming during that time frame.
Yeah, and also like, normally in that period, that mid to late January, as well as early February, you see a lot of Power 4s dish out all their PWOs. Yeah. You'll see tons of people, PW, right? Because they got most of their signing class done, and now they want to fill the roster. With that said, we still don't even know when the 105 roster limit with the 105 scholarship. If you haven't watched that video and that podcast, I highly suggest going and checking out that episode where we break down that new rule. But we still don't know. Is that going to happen in January?
Yeah, it's a mess right now. You know, just talking to, you know, some of my buddies in the business, you know, it's making it really hard. You know, right now, it's roster management is by far, you know, one of the toughest things every program's having to deal with. I don't care what division you're in, you know, for a lot of reasons. But again, I was using the not only are the PWOs, you know, come out then at a pretty good clip, but I was using G5 for an example. But then it just trickles down. So, like, you know, then Division II, you know, they're kind of doing the same thing with the G5s and even the FCS guys. And, you know, their window goes out a little further, the second period. Yeah. So that's when you see a lot more D2 stuff, you know, start happening in the early spring, you know, or in the late signing.
Yeah, but what's crazy is a lot of, like, parents and athletes that we get a chance to speak with, you know, even in November and December, where their kid is probably projected at, you know, the very high end FCS, but they're really like a solid Division II player, and thinking that they're done in February. It's no, that's really the beginning of the period where you have all the way until August 1st to get a scholarship. And these D2 programs have these scholarships ready to go, and they're waiting to see what happens, who goes where. A guy transfers in April in the later portal, and then boom, it's May, and all of a sudden these D2 programs have scholarship opportunities available.
Yeah.
And then you didn't take the time to build relationships with coaches when you could have started in November, in December. Yeah,
and it's you know, it's a mindset, right? You know what I mean? Because, you know, I get it, you know, because I was obviously in that business for a long time, but I was also, now this was obviously a while ago, but I was still, you know, I was a high school coach for many years too. So I do know the mindset of kids, like, you know, especially seniors, where, you know, when they get to the end of the season or they're finishing their high school senior year, you know, when you finish your high school senior year, in your head, like you're done with everything. Like, you know, like everything can be over, like recruiting, your season, you know, everything. It's like, you know, they're just closing the book, you know what I mean? And it's just how people think, you know what I mean, that obviously either don't have the information, you know, that obviously we're trying to give them, you know, or just don't know what they don't know, you know, that it can be a much longer process than that when it comes to recruiting, you know what I mean? But I think they just get in the mindset of, like I said, when the senior year is over, where the clock's stopping, you know what I mean? Or it's time to close the book. If you don't have anything, there's nothing else out there, you know what I mean? And that's not always the case.
Not even, because we haven't even started talking about NAIA programs.
Right.
And I know, I get it. It's not Division II. It's not Division I.
It's college football.
it's college, but it's scholarship college football.
Yeah.
And the way the portal is set up now, you could absolutely crush it in NAIA and get yourself into a really good D2 or an FCS program, depending how good you do and what the need is. And then you can go FCS, you can go G5,
Absolutely.
or you can go to Power 4 if you crush it. Like, this is, I look at, Ole Miss, look at Trey Harris. Trey Harris came from, I think it wasn't even Louisiana Tech or Louisiana,
Right.
which one was it? Louisiana Tech?
I'm not
I
sure.
think that's a G5 program.
Yeah.
He's the best receiver in the SEC. He's still leading the SEC in yards, and he's missed 3.5 games. He's still leading.
Yeah.
And he was a G5 guy, right?
Yeah.
So just because you sign with an NAIA school out of high school, like, that doesn't mean that you can't work your way up. Like, that's the way college football to me is today. It is almost like a minor leagues.
Yeah,
baseball.
I say that in our evaluations that we do on our guys.
Because people get upset.
Well, I always say for the seniors at the end of it, when I'm telling them, things I think they can get better at their position at the end in my notes, and I say this obviously in the video too, but I literally say, showing progress in, certain areas on tape, that I think you can get better at can help level up your evaluation over time. Mm-hmm. I'm not necessarily even talking about in the next 6 months. And then I go on to say, like, if they are, I have them evaluated as an NAIA Division II type guy somewhere in there. I explain to them that exact point. Like, I'm not even necessarily talking about like right in the now. I'm talking about like if you were to land at one of those schools and got an opportunity to go to one of those schools, if you showed progress in those areas at those schools over time, whether it be a year or 2 years, ever how long, because it takes time. People's body develops take longer to develop. A lot of things can get better over the course of a year or two, or whatever the case may be. So when I send those, back to them, I'm talking about that, like, because now more than ever, that's not where you have to finish your career in college football with the way the system's set up now. You know what I mean? I can give several examples. I took a Division II receiver. When I was at Arkansas, that's playing really good for him this year.
D2 to SEC.
But he was not ready, and that's what I try to explain to parents. Like, it's okay not to be ready for that right out of high school. Every kid's different. He would be the first one to tell you that he wasn't ready to play Division I football out of high school. Yeah. So he took the very best D2 opportunity he had. And he went there. He got bigger. He got stronger. He grew like an inch or two. You know what I mean? He got up to about 215 pounds. And all that. And we ended up taking him, and half the league wanted him. You know what I mean? But the point is, like, he was a Division II player. He's playing really good for him this year. He's probably going to get drafted in the late rounds.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean, this year.
That's such a good story.
But he was a Division II player.
Yeah.
The guy playing on the other side of him.
And Division II, just so everyone's listening, you could sign all the way until August 1st.
That's right. Yeah,
and there will be scholarships available.
They can come get you late,
Because, like, there will be scholarships available all the way until the transfer portal opens in the spring. Yeah. And once that transfer portal opens, there will be another batch of scholarships.
Yeah, because that window.
And those are going to get divvied out all the way until August.
As long as they keep it at those 2 transfer portal windows like that, that's always going to be the case. Yeah. It's always going to be the case.
That's why they leave it open. And NAIA programs, anytime.
Yeah. And
anytime. Like, you could sign all the way through camp.
Yeah. In the very same class, I signed Andrew Armstrong, who was at Texas A&M Commerce, a FCS school, you know what I mean, who's like 3rd in the league in receiving right now as well. So, you know what I mean? It happens all the time at every level. So I just really try to encourage them, like I said, on those evaluations, to your point. Like,
it's not an exact science either.
Correct. It's not. But that's why I give them a general, general scenario of, just wherever you start, doesn't matter what level it is, unless you're starting at the top of college football, then it doesn't matter. But if you're starting in one of those other divisions, that definitely doesn't necessarily mean that's where you're going to stay. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean, in college football now. Where it used to be, if you went there, you were probably going to have to stay there a while because you only got one shot at it and you couldn't leave. But it's just not like that anymore. Yeah. So there's a lot of doors that open up, even if they open up later than expected coming out of high school. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just a lot of opportunity.
We use examples, and we should always continue to use examples, but I'll just share my example because you evaluated my high school game film, and I was absolutely not a Division I. I was absolutely not a Division II. NAIA at best. Right. And I ended up being an SEC scholarship player. Yeah. So it's not an exact science.
It's not, and it never will be.
Yeah, and starting out at the lower level, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
None.
And so, you know, I hope that this will give people perspective, not just on dates and timelines, but also like on the path, right?
Yeah.
We evaluate players. You probably have seen our stuff where we evaluate players. If you want to get a professional evaluation, there'll be a link somewhere around this video where you can see if your son meets the criteria to get one. With that said, we are always no gray area. We're not going to tell you you're Division I if you're not. We're going to be upfront with you, but we're also going to tell you what you need to do to get to the next level.
Yeah.
And I think that's really key and really important. And we'll also share with you why we say he's Division II right now, or FCS right now, or G5 right now, or whatever he is, why he is that, so that you know, and that you can, you know, because a lot of people do get evaluations from their trainers, right? Their trainer, or they get an evaluation from a high school coach, which is fine, but like getting an evaluation from somebody who has 15 years of college football recruiting experience, you might get a little bit more accurate, right? And if you're not, like the big thing is if you're not accurate, all your outreach, all your marketing, all your effort is going to be to the wrong coaches, and you're not going to get the result that you're looking for.
Yeah, yeah, and just to follow up on that, like on the point you made earlier, you know, just, you know, for parents or athletes, you know, you can get a lot of, you know, whether it's an evaluation or an opinion from a lot of people, and it'd be really hard to get them all on the same page. You know what I mean? And to Richie's point, it's not an exact science, and it never will be. If it was, the same few teams would, you know what I mean, do really well, you know, even in the NFL. You know what I mean? The draft process. I've been around that very heavily when I was in college football. I was a pro liaison for every school I worked at, you know, and I went to the combine every year to Senior Bowl, and even talking to those guys, and that's how I tried to get better as an evaluator, by talking to those guys, and I learned that even from them. Like, you know what I mean? You have certain things that you look for, but it's not always going to be, you know, an exact science. So, you know, when we do those things, it's not necessarily, it's never saying that, you know, that's the end all be all. You know what I mean? Because you can have one coach that really thinks highly of you at a higher division and get an opportunity there. You know what I mean? But also, to your point, you have to start somewhere. And if you're starting in the wrong place, you know, you can waste a lot of time and effort, you know what I mean, if you're way off and starting in the wrong place, versus targeting your outreach and targeting the things you're doing to divisions that are more in your wheelhouse to try to get more results earlier.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, it's super accurate, super true, and you know, I hope that this podcast provided you perspective on the actual timelines, right? Where NAIAs are signing anytime. So it's not too late to get a scholarship, right? It's not too late to reach out. It's not too late to start marketing yourself and getting yourself in front of college coaches. D2s are signing all the way until August, right? D1s, especially the G5s and the FCSs, are signing all the way until April 1st. Now, Power 4, majority are going to happen in early December. Some will happen on February 5th, but
less than 1%.
Yeah, very small percentage. So as far as timeline goes, there's lots of opportunity. And as far as perspective goes on your son and the opportunity ahead of him, my thing is, what lesson do we want to teach these players, right? If you're in the fourth quarter and you're down in life and things aren't going your way, do you quit and say it's too late? Or do you go after what you want and go all in to get what it is that you should deserve if you're going to do the work, right? And so, unfortunately, most people in life, they give up, they quit on themselves. And so my lesson to players, if you're watching this, is it's never too late. Obviously, it's better to start earlier, but you have a choice. You can go all in and do all the work and all the necessary things to see if you can get the result, or you can quit like most people. But that's a choice that you have. And for all of you younger underclassmen people, the earlier you start, the more relationships that you'll get. Before we go, anything else you want to add?
No, I think we covered. I hope it helped, guys. And like Richie said, you know, it's always just educate yourself. Make sure you educate
That's
yourself.
why they're here.
That's right, and that's why hopefully you're listening to our podcast, and we were helpful. But educate yourself. Don't always. The best advice I give to parents on this topic in particular, and many others, is just do your research. Find some people that have maybe done it before. The answers aren't always in the stands, is what I always tell them. There's a lot of things going to be said when you're out there watching your son, but that's why we're here to help. So I hope the information was helpful.
Awesome. All right. Appreciate you listening to this podcast. If you got value, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification on if you're on YouTube, and wherever you're listening to your podcast, if you could leave us a review sharing your thoughts, that would be really helpful in continuing to allow us to post more and post more content. So look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Scholarship Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. And for more free resources, or if you're interested in working with us, visit gonextplay.com. Until next time.